this was way back in 2015-16, I started seeing that India is a much larger opportunity for the future compared to any other market. Plus, I did realize that I have a certain advantage of building in India compared to building in US. Uh, the way to explain that is, I'm just oversimplifying, right? In US, maybe the skill set that I have built, they could be potentially at least, let's say, 100 other people who will have very similar skill set to me. So my skill sets are not that unique in US just by the nature of the population in US and the lesser amount of time that I've spent in US. Compare that to in India, where I've spent 90% of my life, plus given the amount of education, etc., that happens in India, I think my skill set could be very unique.
Hey Abhishek, thank you so much for joining us on Thinking Out Loud podcast. We are super stoked to have you here and we are very excited to undertake this discussion today to understand everything about your journey, about Plum and how Plum is trying to completely democratize the insurance and the insurance tech ecosystem of the country. Thank you so much for joining us, Abhishek.
Hey, Samarth, thanks for having me. And this is a great initiative. I think we in India need to talk a lot more about all the innovations that are happening. So thank you for running this initiative in the first place, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. So, just to start off and put the ball out of the court, you've had a very illustrious background in terms of your education and then your master's and then moving to the States and doing a bunch of things in the States and then again moving back to India, right? So, just wanted to understand from you your journey as to how you started, moved out, again came back in, right? Like a short synopsis of sorts.
Sure, I would say I wouldn't use the word illustrious. For most of my career, I think I was following a rat race of what is the right thing to do by listening to other people. I think if you're born in India, everyone will push you into doing engineering at a good college, and that's how I got into engineering in the first place. Out of IIT, you go into placement, and when you go into placement, organizations like McKinsey, etc., are the companies that your seniors will advise you, and that's how I got into consulting in the first place. So I started my job as consultant almost 15 years ago. But I think it was a great way to start the career. I think it definitely helped me understand some of the fundamentals of building a business. But I think very quickly in those 2.5 years, figured out that hey, I don't want to be a consultant. I want to build things. So I think I started this journey of being in a startup and building almost 13, 14 years ago. Joined a startup in India. It was called 9.9 Media. Went out to US to do my masters. I would again say that was more scripted. That if you are going into consulting, most of the people will advise that hey, after 3-4 years, go and do an MBA from a good college in the US. So I just did what everyone else was doing. But again, I think I got lucky to be at the right place. I think being in an environment like a Silicon Valley at Stanford, I think gives you a very different perspective of what thinking big really means, what it really means to innovate. I think the best of the companies have come out of that place, and there is a reason behind that. So I did use that time to just change or build some of my perspectives of what to do in life. Started out a venture in the US. Eventually, that didn't work out. We were in the wrong kind of business. We were building an e-commerce rental business with an unit economics that wouldn't have scaled up. So we eventually shut it down. I thought of getting a more formal product management experience, so worked for some time at Google, but eventually wanted to come back to building a startup. So then eventually moved back to India to build a startup. We were building a company called Hypertrack. And then most recently, when I say recently, this is now for the last 4 years or so, building a company called Plum. We are trying to make some impact in the space of health and insurance. So that has been my journey so far. But I think it has been, for most of the parts, it was chasing what everyone else would have said, asked me to chase. But I think now we are eventually building something that I'm really passionate about.
That's actually a very amazing answer, Abhishek. But the commonality that we've had with most of the panelists is that through this entire rat race, they somehow found their calling. So I mean, even though it is called the rat race, most people end up finding their calling. So the next question, Abhishek, and I think this is something that you would have been asked at various other interviews as well, is that given the illustrious career you've had, and the, if I may say so, sexy roles that you might have done over the years, what drove your attention to A, moving back to India, and B, taking up a sector like insurance and insurance tech, which from a very general parlance is not so cool or not, so inviting for entrepreneurs or founders, given the various intricacies that are there in terms of, revenue, in terms of, only being profitable if you have an insurance license, right? So what was the mindset that made you come to this space in general?
Absolutely. So I think two questions that you asked. One is why India, and then why insurance. And to me, these were two very different things because happened at two very different points in time. So I moved back to India almost 8 years ago, and this was when I was figuring out what to build post Google. And I think that's at a point in time I started seeing, this was way back in 2015-16. I started seeing that India is a much larger opportunity for the future compared to any other market. Plus, I did realize that I have a certain advantage of building in India compared to building in US. Uh, the way to explain that is, I'm just oversimplifying, right? In US, maybe the skill set that I have built, they could be potentially at least, let's say, 100 other people who will have very similar skill set to me. So my skill sets are not that unique in US just by the nature of the population in US and the lesser amount of time that I've spent in US. Compare that to in India, where I've spent 90% of my life. Plus, given the amount of education, etc., that happens in India, I think my skill set could be very unique. So I have an advantage to build in India compared to the US. So those were the two primary reasons, which is my belief in India plus where do I have the unique advantage between US and India. So that is what drove me to India almost 7-8 years ago. The question around why insurance is very different because insurance is something that I got into almost 4 years ago. I think there it was two reasons again. One is Saurabh, who's my co-founder. So Saurabh and I were figuring out what do we want to build next. And both of us have been through this journey of building startups now 3 or 4 times in our life. And one of the things that was very sure of, one of the things that we decided was, hey, let's not build a company where it's just about building another company, but let's build a company now where we can have impact beyond building a company, where we can have an impact on people on a day-to-day basis. And in that exploration that we did for almost 6-7 months, we were most passionate about this space, this intersection of health and insurance. So I wouldn't say we are purely an insurance business. We are at the intersection of health and insurance. If you actually walk down the hall of Plum, and we have roughly 300 colleagues at Plum, every minute, every hour, we are making impact on someone's life, right? And I think that is what really drives people on a day-to-day basis. You're building company, but building a company is very abstract. What people really get excited about when you wake up every day is, hey, are you making some positive impact on someone's life, right? So one of the things that we were very sure is, let's pick something where we can actually have a positive impact. So that was one reason of picking this industry. The other reason is, and this is also to your point on uh, insurance is so complicated, insurance is not so sexy as a business. I fundamentally think there are two kinds of companies that you can build, right? One is you're either building in an industry which doesn't exist today. So you're creating a new industry. Think of Facebook getting built in 2003, where social didn't exist, and you're creating a new industry called social. Or you are creating in an industry where it's already a large industry but very traditional, and you're going to disrupt that industry using tech, using better experience, and so on, right? Uh, Fundamentally, uh, and you have to choose what is your strength. And again, when Saurabh and I were figuring out what is our strength is more towards two, which is pick an existing industry and let's disrupt that industry. So we're not creating a new market. We are going after a very sleepy market. Insurance used to be a very sleepy market. And I think you used the right word, which is non-sexy business. So pick a business that is not sexy, but is large. It's growing. People spend tens of thousands of crores today on their health insurance. It is growing at roughly 25% year on year. Very, very rare to find an industry that is so large already and growing at such a rapid pace, right? 25% year on year means it is doubling every 4 years, right? Very hard to find such an amazing industry, but it has been a sleepy industry. So yes, we're going after a sleepy, non-sexy industry, but that's the fun of it, because hey, it is large, so we can actually make a very large impact end of the day.
No, that I think I totally agree with that narrative, right? And Abhishek, like one parallel which I wanted to draw over here, which I think you would relate to a lot, is that US as a market when it comes to health and insurance, right? It's fairly developed with the entire payer model in place, right? What I wanted to understand from you, which I think is not very clearly out in the open, is where exactly India is right now in terms of adoptability and execution with regards to insurance, right? Like, again, if you even ask a finfluencer or a finance junkie, he or she will provide you all the different what should I say, nuances about insurance, right? But when it comes to practical level adoptability or practical level execution, they'll be like, hey, I mean, we don't know, right, like how it works. So wanted to understand from you that from a market, right, both from a business lens and from a consumer lens, right, where are we in terms of the overall adoptability of insurance and insurance tech as an industry or sub industry, if I may say so?
Sure. So I think again you're asking two separate questions. One is insurance, and then second is tech. I think with respect to insurance, a great data to look at is the annual report that is published by the insurance regulator IIDAI. It publishes number of people who have, let's say, health insurance. If you pick health insurance as one of the insurance products, number of people that are covered under different kind of health insurance products, and if you look at those numbers. Roughly 30% of the population of India right now are covered through different kind of health insurance products that includes your Ayushman Bharat kind of schemes. But if you actually assume that most of the Ayushman Bharat kind of schemes right now do not work efficiently, what works really efficiently is the private insurance, which is either the insurance that is provided by their organization or insurance that you and I would purchase directly as a retail user. That penetration is sub 15%, right? So if you ask me about real penetration, it is in that 15 to 20% kind of range, which means more than 5x of the population still needs to be covered under some kind of health insurance that people can really use. So that's the adoption of health insurance. Your second question on what is the adoption of tech within insurance, we are just getting started. Most of the insurance purchases that you would do, or understanding of insurance that you would do, or usage of insurance that you would do is through a non-tech intervention. You'll have to talk to some person to purchase insurance. You would have to talk to some person to claim your insurance, right? So I think we are very, very far away from getting tech in every single user flow of insurance. If you would ask me to put a number, it's probably 1%. We still have 99% work to be done.
Fairly interesting point, Abhishek. And just to double down on that point that you said, right? That still, in terms of I buying an insurance, it's still very fragmented, right? It's still very unorganized, right? What do you think will be the measures to bridge the gap wherein the space becomes more organized, right? Like someone can actually, through the knowledge and through the various resources that are available, he or she can directly purchase off the policy from an organized portal or a platform, right? Like, what do you think would be those 6 7 levers that would be helpful to reach or bridge that gap, if I may say so?
Absolutely. I think you'll have to break down the journey from a user perspective, right? And this could be two kinds of user. Either it's a retail user. When I say retail, think of an individual purchasing insurance, or it can be a organization that is purchasing insurance for their employees or their family members. But it applies in both of those journeys. If you break down the user journey, the first part is, hey, do I understand what kind of insurance is the right insurance for me or for my employees? Can the tech really help me with respect to understanding what I really need? Right now, that part is mostly done by, let's say, an insurance agent that will come and meet you and explain you that, hey, you are a 30-year-old person living in Bangalore, and hence this is the right kind of insurance to buy. Or, hey, you are a 20 people company with this kind of age profile, and you should buy this kind of insurance. But can that be done using a tech product where I can understand you as a company and recommend, hey, this is the right insurance product to be set up for your employees? So that is first part of the journey. Second part of the journey is, I've helped you understand what you need. Can I price the risk, right? Insurance is about risk pricing. So can I price the risk automatically in real time? So you have figured out that you need a 5 lakh insurance cover for all your employees and your family members. Right now, in a traditional world, it would take insurance company almost 4 or 5 rounds of back and forth and maybe a month to give you a quote, right? Can I actually make it real time, self-serve, where you come to plumhq.com and you give some details and you get a real time pricing, and it's a pricing which is accurate as well, so that you can actually make the payment and set up the policy, right? So that is the second part, which is, can I make the underwriting, the risk pricing completely automated, real time, self-serve? And the third part is, you know that this is the product that you need and this is the price, and you're now ready to make a purchase. After that, most of the documentations in India is still very physical. You give me this kind of KYC documentation, you make a payment, and we will issue your policy in a week, and you'll get some policy document in a month, and then that's when you can start using your insurance, right? Can I automate all of that using technology again, right? Can you make the payment and everything is live on the same day, and your employees get an invite saying, hey, Samarth bought a health insurance for all the employees, and here is how you can use. You just log into plumhq.com and you can see your policy details and use it from day one, right? So I'm just breaking down that user journey into how you would go through it, and you have to just think of what an offline person will do. You have to just build it using tech, right? So that's how we at Plum are looking at it, which is, look at any user journey and keep building the tech part, right? And I'm right now talking about just the first part of insurance, which is purchase. Purchase is a simple part. The actual complication happens when people have to use it. So how do you then use technology to educate people? And in the business of group health insurance or employee health insurance is slightly more complicated, because the buyer is different from the consumer. The buyer may be Samarth, but the consumer may be, let's say, one of your employees who had no clue what was purchased. So how do you educate that employee as well, that, hey, here is what is covered, here is what is not covered, so that you don't end up having a surprise when you're at a hospital, And then when you actually go and end up using the insurance, you can have a very seamless experience, let's say on a mobile app that you have, the Plum mobile app that you have, right? So that's the another part of user journey that you can build using tech.
Interesting. Like that is exactly what most employees also face, that insurance policy though we have, but like what after that, right? So Abhishek, like one very interesting fact that you spoke of was in terms of execution and the usability, right? And one of the biggest challenges that most people face is in terms of claim settlement, right? Like how to have seamless claim settlements, because there are a lot of FAQs that most people don't know of, or they are not very much aware of their rights, right? So how exactly is Plum using tech or tech in general in the ecosystem to solve this claim settlement part, or at least make it more seamless, right? Because first of what is required is to have a seamless experience, and then simplifying the settlement bit.
Yeah. So I would actually break it into three parts. One is education. How do you? I think the reason people have a bad experience is because we have unnecessarily complicated the insurance policy. These insurance policies are like a 30-40 page legal document, and you have to be a lawyer to understand each of these terms. And most of the times there'll be a term on page 20 which will conflict with the term that is mentioned in page 30. That's how bad the policy documents are. Can you really simplify the policy document where you can understand what's covered, what's not covered on a simple mobile app, on one screen of mobile app, right? We One of the benchmarks that we tried ourselves to meet is, can a 10-year-old person, a 15-year-old person understand what is covered, what is not covered in your insurance? I think if we do number one well, which is simplify your insurance and educate people, half of the battle is won. Uh, if you've done that well, number two is how do you build the front end of the user experience. When I say front end, the experience where people are coming and filing their claim, right? If you look at the current products, those claim filing process in itself is very cumbersome, where I have to fill, maybe I have to go to a portal which is like built in 2010 or maybe 2000. It will take me 20 minutes to fill a lot of forms on the portal, with a lot of failures that will happen along the way. I'll have to then submit things physically, fill things and submit things physically, and courier those documents to an insurance company. And then I don't know what will happen, right? I'm just waiting. I have to wait patiently. Can you actually change all of that experience into a simple mobile app where it should take me less than a minute or 2 minutes to file a claim, right? I have to just answer a few simple questions and maybe take a scan of a few documents of my claim, and it's done, right? To give you very simple examples, in the old process, the insurance company will ask you for redundant details like, hey, what is your name, date of birth, where do you live, what is your address, so on, right? I already have all of those details. When you bought insurance from me, I already collected all of those details. These are redundant details that I am asking, right? So just think from a user perspective and simplify. Uh, so that is the second part, which is building user experiences, which are very very simple, which should otherwise cut that 60 minutes or maybe a day long process to a 2-minute process. And then number three, using tech in the backend to speed up the claims processing. And what I mean by that is, let's say, if certain part of claims processing is about figuring out and matching all the documents that you submitted to me, right? You can actually use a lot of advancements in technology that exist today to do that automatically rather than putting a people. Uh, right now, a lot of people bandwidth goes into sending details from, let's say, Plum to a traditional insurance company, right? And I have to go and, let's say, Samarth as a user submitted claim to Plum, and Plum has to go and file that claim to ICICI Lombard in the backend, right? I can solve all of that backend work by building APIs between ICICI Lombard and Plum so that everything just works in real time. So as soon as Samarth files a claim at Plum, it automatically goes in real time to ICICI Lombard, creates a claim ID, and then someone at ICICI Lombard will approve the claim. And as soon as that is done, it will automatically come to Plum that a claim is approved and Samarth will be notified, right? So how do you use and leverage technology in the backend to simplify what would otherwise be a very manual, time-consuming process? And anything that is manual will eventually break or will have misses, right? So those are three layers that we are using, which is one is simplification and education, number two is better user experiences, and number three is just leveraging tech on the backend.
So, Abhishek, I mean, you've simplified the entire consumer journey, right? But one particular point that I would want to double down on again is the bridging of gap for the knowledge, right? From an end consumer perspective, like I being an employee of organization A who has taken a policy from Plum, right? I, as an employee of organization A, how do you think insurance companies or insurtech companies can use the power of content, can use the power of short content to educate and bridge this gap, right? Because it's all about knowledge filling. Because I feel, or I believe, that insurance is an industry in which if the customer is also equally educated, the TAT becomes much lesser, right? Because a lot of redundancies are done away with, right? So what is your view on it, and what is Plum doing on it to bridge this gap?
No, actually, that's an excellent question, Samarth. I think a lot of problems exist because of lack of knowledge, lack of awareness. Be it your first problem, which is penetration problem. A lot of people haven't purchased insurance because they are not aware about the power of insurance. If you look at the last 3 years, there was a big spike in penetration of insurance in India, and the biggest reason was a lot of us had someone in our close family or a colleague who went through COVID, went through hospitalization, and we got educated that hey, insurance is useful, right? So if you do the right education, you will have a huge impact on uh, penetration of insurance in the first place. The second problem that we talked about, which is the claims experience. The reason, yes, there is claims experience that is broken on the insurance company part, but I think you had the right point, which is a lot of times claims experience is broken because even the consumers are not educated how to file a claim. They will file a claim with fewer documents than what is necessary, right? For a claim, for example, you do need a receipt, which is a simple receipt that hey, I have made a payment of 1 lakh to the hospital for a certain surgery. I need a receipt. An insurance company needs a receipt to make out a payment, right? Now, for most of the people, actually 90% of the people in any year file a claim for the very first time, and they're not educated about certain kind of requirement that insurance company would have, and people would just throw away the receipt, for example, before filing a claim. And now when I'm filing a claim, I just don't have that document because I was not educated enough that hey, this is a document that is required, right? So I think the impact that this industry can have by doing the right content and educating people is immense, both in terms of penetration and the user experience part. uh, I think what we are doing at Plum is two things. One is, and we talked briefly about it, one is simplification, which is how do we, because insurance is so unsexy, insurance is so complicated, how do we simplify it so that people actually read it, people find it, people can consume it, people can understand it, right? And the second aspect is how do you make it how do you make it sexy, how do you make it interesting? Insurance, if you look at any of the insurance ad and just think of the insurance ad that you would have seen last on TV, maybe on a cricket match, or any other insurance ad that you would have seen, uh, let's say on a billboard, right? Insurance ads have been very boring and I don't know why, but insurance ads have been very boring. Insurance content has been very boring. So how do you make this industry this industry very interesting so that people find it sexy, people generate interest to read that certain kind of content. So if you look at the content that Plum generates, you will see that we are trying to build a new kind of creativity in all the content that we create so that people just find it very interesting to read. And sometimes our content is may not be linked directly to insurance. We will talk about, hey, let's say, what should HR leaders do for their employees to build the right kind of benefits, right? But it is to spark an interest of an HR leader, and then plug in insurance into that, so that now in that larger perspective of what the organization should do or an HR leader should do for the employees, they also start consuming knowledge about insurance, right? So I would say, we look at content from those two perspectives, which is simplify, and also make it interesting, make it very creative, rather than a very boring industry that used to exist so far.
Makes sense, makes sense. And Abhishek, just to take a cue from here and switching gears and moving more so from moving more to your life as an entrepreneur, as a founder at Plum. I wanted to understand, how did you use this narrative to rebrand Plum, right? Like the entire rebranding exercise of Plum to make it more in sync with the current day and age was something that was caught in action by a lot of people. So just wanted to understand the psyche, the narrative that went behind this entire exercise of bringing Plum to what it is present day.
So actually, I wouldn't even call it rebranding, to be very honest. Samarth, it was branding. When the original logo and the color, etc., that we chose, we never thought deeply about what our brand should be. We had to launch the product, the company, on one day, and overnight we figured out some logo and some color, and we just put it out there on the website. So our original brand, and I wouldn't call it a brand, it's just like some logo and some color. We never thought about it, it just happened automatically. I think when we started growing is when we started thinking, now we have to actually think about what our brand really stands for. What are some of the principles? What should be a color palette? What should be a logo? What should be a design language? So it was essentially a branding exercise and not a rebranding exercise, because that was the first time we were actually doing it with some thoughts going behind it. And it is naturally the right time to do is when you have had some product market fit, right? Doing a branding exercise when you don't have anything doesn't mean anything, right? You're doing branding for a user base that doesn't exist. So I think it was a natural evolution for us after almost a year and a half of our journey that, hey, we have achieved product market fit. Now let's think about what our brand stands for. And that's when we spent almost a quarter thinking about the brand that you see now. And the great part was, by that time, we also had leaders in the team who understands brand much more than me or Saurabh. So they were able to lead that exercise for us.
Very, very interesting, Abhishek. And a follow-up question to that, right? In terms of you as a leader and Saurabh as a leader, right? How do you as two co-founders go about hiring the right talent in a space like insurance and insurance tech, right? Because again, in terms of pecking order from a candidate POV, right, this will never be the first choice of application, right? Like people are more fearful to this sector than very approachable, right? So just wanted to understand that you were able to create a 300 member strong team in Plum, right? So just wanted to understand the narrative and the thought process that you guys follow for hiring.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think one is both Saurabh and I actually come from a world of we never had any experience with insurance, and we are playing to that strength. We do believe that a lot of times experience of a certain industry, and especially if you're playing in building in an industry that is very traditional in nature, that experience can become a blocker. So for us, the largest part of our team actually comes out from with zero insurance experience, so that they are able to think from first principles. They are able to challenge the status quo in the industry. That said, we do have certain leaders and people from the insurance, so that we don't have to relearn everything from ground zero, right? If certain things exist in the industry, we should just know it from those sets of people within the team. So we do a 80-20 kind of thing within the company, which is 80% people get from outside and 20% people from the industry. I think second is what kind of people to hire. There we look for people who are very mission oriented, people who want to build this for the long term, who are excited about what we are building for the next 20 years, because what we are building would require that kind of a time period and a commitment. So we are for us, it's not about hiring, let's say, the smartest people out there, but the most mission oriented person out there. But eventually for us, we do believe that the biggest advantage that we would create over a longer period of time is our people, is the quality of people. If we have the best people in the industry, we'll always run 10% faster than everyone else. Eventually, over a 10-year period, that 10% advantage that we have every day, every month, will accumulate, right? And we will be probably 10x larger than our number two competitor from that perspective. So we are very conscious about who we hire, and we are trying to attract the best people. Actually, I think we have done a really good job in terms of attracting the best people out there that way.
That's super interesting, Abhishek. And just now to that one conclusionary question that we ask all our panel members, and this is more so from your personal development and who you are as an individual, right? So Abhishek, what sort of books, newsletters, podcasts, other learning resources that you use to keep yourself abreast, right? Like in terms of the various experiences that you've had in your past to what makes you Abhishek today, right? Just wanted to understand that.
So I think it's a very deep question. I think it can take an hour, but because there is no one thing that can shape an individual. But if I have to pick one reading material, I would say definitely read No Rules Rules. This is about the Netflix culture. I think it's a very interesting take on how to think about the people that you attract, the people that you retain. And this is especially relevant because we were just talking about hiring. There's a question that you asked, Samarth. I think from that perspective, I think it's the best book to read from the book that exists out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Abhishek, for that. And again, thank you so much, Abhishek, for taking out time and doing this. It was lovely talking to you, and I think this is the most crisp yet concise, summarized version of the entire insurance and insurance tech ecosystem commentary that we have. And again, thank you so much, Abhishek, for doing this. It was lovely talking.
Hey, same here, Samarth. Thank you so much for having me. Very interesting set of questions, and I hope it was helpful to a few of you at least.
Thank you, for sure.